older people your age, everybody's on you like, you're wasting your talent. You should be selling this. You have to bow to capitalism. You must earn. You must. If you're not, you're a fool. And I was like, yep, I just want to have some fun though. I just like it. And then the more the business develops around the creative, the less creative and the more admin you become.
All right, first things first, I don't know what your official title is. So you just want to shed some light on that? Like if I had to send you an email to Hadassah Gordon, like what would the subtitle be?
Okay. Well, for Samsung, I'm Hadassah Gordon, Samsung Galaxy Master Trainer for Trinidad and Tobago.
All right, cool. And like if you had to have this conversation 10, 20 years ago, that profession kind of didn't exist, right? So how would you explain this profession to an older crowd or somebody from a previous generation? Like what would you tell them?
All right. So basically, what I do is product development and training. So obviously, with new products, you have to have somebody who can go through it with the sales team and actually guide them on targets and what is the brand story. So that's what I do. So I'll tell them about the product. So they would say I'm under marketing
Mhm.
and probably working with sales.
So you're like that kind of bridge between marketing and sales, try to get the products out there to tell people about what the products are and like how to use them and then how it's integrated into like everyday life, or is it, or does it expand into more than what we could see on the surface?
Well, yeah, definitely what you said. And also, we also do like, I would do soft skills training with the team. So customer service, and even I use some of my, um, psychology background to help them, like overcoming objections and certain things in their personal lives too that interfere with just professionalism as a whole. Because we call our team, our experienced consultants. So happy mind, happy life, I think. Yeah.
You touched on the psychology background just now. When you were going to school, you studied psychology and then followed that up with an MBA. Did you, while studying, see yourself in this role now?
No, not at all. In fact, it's kind of funny, and I say this sometimes, that, you know, I think it's quite understandable for a lot of people at that age and in school to think, okay, yeah, this is what I want to do. And then they do a new class and a new subject or speak with their friends and they change their mind. So no, I didn't know quite because I started with psychology thinking I would be a psychologist and because I would just wanted to help people. And then my heart changed. So I said, what else do I like and what else am I good at? And I said I would try business after. And then I got confused too because I wanted to be able to merge the two. And lo and behold, and this is the power of, expressing yourself, being willing to take a little risk, and also having a network. I was exposed to the position that I am in. I was very scared because I wasn't sure if I would even fit. Um, but somehow I managed to try to merge the two and take a leap of faith and figure it out. And day by day, I kind of get it. And
Right,
now
right.
it's approaching 7 years. So I hope that answered the question. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a saying that goes, not, it basically says not to let education get in the way of your learning. Like,
Yeah.
how do you feel when you hear that? Like, what comes to mind when you hear that, given your past experiences and what you think of education right now?
I think it shows a distinction between education and learning that we think it's synonymous, like education is the only way you learn. But no, because sometimes I have found that with let's say I have a degree and the master's, that only took me so far in the workplace. And then you actually start working and certain things that's not in a book or that you quite like you had the theory and you only learned on the job really. So um an example for me where my education probably got in the way of my learning is that, you know, we had a textbook definition of leadership, for example. that you have autocratic and then you have laissez-faire, etc. So, I was thinking in my head, all right, so I'm leading a team. I have to be piece of this and piece of that, and that will work out for sure. And then it didn't. It didn't really work out because the group of people I was interacting with, too dynamic. They have a mix of personalities. So laissez-faire would work with some of the individuals, and then autocratic would work with some of the individuals. So uh, that's the part where I couldn't just stop and be like, well, the textbook and what I learned in school said to do this, so I have to stick and do this so it'll work a certain way. No, definitely, you just have to learn as you go, and be open to experiences when you're in the workplace and of course business. And I strongly believe that you are whoever you are, wherever you are. So yeah, it's about all around development, not just educational and not just like separating the two.
So with that, there tends to be a certain fluidity and a certain ability to adapt both to people and to situations. Is that a skill that is hard to learn, or is it something that could be taught?
Honestly, I think it's more a personal willingness.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's how willing are you to learn. You can say that you want success, and then let's just say there's certain personal um, challenges you're going through that are that hinder you from actually taking risk or expanding yourself. Yeah, and opening up yourself to growth. I've seen it before, and it has happened to me personally as well. So as you overcome things in your personal life, actually, it tends to filter out into everything you do.
So then that growth, right, and that sense of growth, does it
Yeah,
then add? Is it like a compound effect to that same sense of fluidity, giving you that ability to learn and understand different people? Is it something that you get better with over time, or
yeah.
is it?
For
Do you
sure.
think that there's a finite point that we could reach to say no? I've learned this.
No, absolutely not. You're right. We constantly keep growing because, for example, 2020, I could not have ever predicted 2020 and how I have to navigate now. And I'm sure you can agree. You've developed certain personal traits of survival, really, and reaching out to people that were not normal in even January 2020. So definitely you keep growing and you keep learning every day, every year. Yeah.
Yeah. So touching on 2020, we've
Hmm.
just had the US election. We just had Kamala
Oh
Harris
dear.
come into power, right? As a
Yeah.
woman of color, right? What is the
Right.
stereotype that you think will be affected by her presence?
This is a loaded question. I don't want to end up like Eva Longoria. I don't know if you saw the news today.
No,
Did
tell
you?
me. No.
Oh Lord, she was just quoted on MSNBC as well, people in the comments are saying that she's undermining black women of color by stating that Latina women of color are the real heroines of the election. So then they started quoting the stats and showing her the percentages of voter turnout, etc. So I don't like to comment on politics, please. But as a general blanket statement, as far as Kamala Harris, uh, it's for me representation. Obviously, I care about young girls, etc., and having a role model for them. Just seeing people who look like you in a position of power and influence is, of course, a great motivator. It makes your goals seem a little more real. Yeah.
I mean, you have achieved a lot to this point, right?
Yay. That make me blush.
And to someone who might be younger than you, or even to your younger self, you might be that role model. Do you think of that responsibility actively, or is it something that comes out from time to time in certain situations?
Wow, your questions are so great. Um, do I think of it all the time? As far as morals go, you know, we're members of society and we do, follow the moral code of society and such. As far as for me, every decision I make, let's say if I'm thinking I'm a role model or not, not necessarily, but I am living up to my own personal moral code. And if I dig deep into my own personal moral code, yes, it does entail having some sort of legacy. I don't just want to be the richest, the biggest, the baddest. I mean, it feels a bit empty to me personally. So in that sense, yes, my values could make me someone others could look up to. Yeah, because I don't think this race is just about success, success, money, money. It's more for me than that, you know?
I've seen based on you saying that, right? There seems to be like a dichotomy between success in a traditional sense and the values that surround success. Could you like enlighten a little bit on what are your values that lead to success, not necessarily in a financial sense, but more in a fulfillment light?
Okay. Um, Honestly, to me, the most important thing, everlasting, is love, in any form, whether it's your self-love, love of family, love of happiness, love of peace, love in any form, really. Even if you are a religious person or not, love drives us in everything we do. Whether you want to admit it or not. Some people think they love money, but they might love the comforts that come with money. So I try not to get too sidetracked. I mean, yeah, when you hear that skirt, though, that is lovely. But yeah, love is my driving force, really.
Mm.
I love animals, and I just want to get to a comfortable space to do the work. Like you hear people like Oprah, and might have better examples as well. But just doing the work to me is getting to a place where you can actually tune out the world a bit and get more in tune with what really your heart's telling you to do. And most of the times, what your heart's telling you to do doesn't necessarily make the most money, right? You'll be very blessed and lucky to be one of those persons who exactly what your heart is telling you to do is what's shading out your millions. So God bless you if you're that person. For a person like me, saving the animals and having self-help workshops for women and children, that kind of thing. I wouldn't want to take money for doing something like that. So I have to get a place, maybe with businesses, etc., investing or whatever, that I could comfortably funnel that for myself or champion it for myself or have some kind of organization for myself. So yeah.
So, in saying that, there's a place for money, there's a place for aspirations outside of business. So, business sort of fuels that ability to do the things that you really want to do, right?
Yeah.
So, if you were to tell someone else about that responsibility between business and money, and if you were to look for that sort of link, right? How
Yeah.
would you kind of shape that to explain to them if it is that they didn't understand that, because you have an innate understanding of, look, you have a role for money, you have a role for doing things that bring you happiness and the things that you love doing, but somebody else may not understand that. If there was a way to
Mhm.
explain that to them, probably substituting money with something else, is there any way that you think that, given the society that we live in and given 2020, is there really any way to discuss things like that without talking about money?
Value for sure. So if you don't want to use the word money, value, in quality management, they don't say money actually, they say value. So customer service management and even procurement management, they talk about the value chain because they see it as not just we're creating products or we're creating um the services. We're actually creating value within the community. We're creating systems of value. So definitely we could use the term value. And for example, let's say Coca-Cola. Oh, I'm not supposed to call brands. Oops. But let's just say a big brand. What is their story all about? They don't spend millions of dollars to just have a cool ad with a superstar like Beyonce, etc. No names again, but um, they're trying to create value. It's brand value. It's a story that should have, I think, what do you call it? Not guarantee, goodwill, right? So they want to be in a household name. They want to. It's just it's feelings. That's why I go back to love. People might think, oh my God, you sound like a hippie. You're all about this love stuff. But love moves us, shapes us, makes us, right? So when the big brand is trying to sell you this drink, fizzy, you really think they're selling you sugar and a carbonated beverage? They're selling you a story. They're selling you a feeling. And the one thing that we can all feel is love. So definitely value. You get to know somebody. Like if I'm trying to maybe talk to the youth as your question is, I guess, asking. I'll try to sit with them and ask them what is most important to them. Everybody has a story, you know. Um, what is most important to some people? Just in my team, I can give you an example. Then, uh, one guy is a single parent, so obviously making ends meet for him is most important. So having a conversation with him that doesn't include money at this time because he is pressed for said money, it would seem superficial. Not superficial. Would seem like it's not a priority to him at this time. So to be honest to him, he needs to get out of a certain situation, which is a red zone. So money is an important conversation for him. But truly, the value that he wants created in his life is to provide for his family. Yeah. And that's the love. That's what's pushing him to come out to work and probably have multiple jobs. Uh, his main goal in life is to provide, right? So anything that he can align himself where he's a provider and comfortably so will create value for his life. Then we might have somebody else, probably a young female student, um, trying to study right now in the COVID situation. Everything's online and it's actually more work than being in a classroom. So how can we create value for that person? So what in her mind in a business form could create value? Well, definitely what she's struggling with is probably as well to get out of the current situation. A lot of people want more money to get out of their current situation. Yeah. And along the way they want the money to create more value in their lives. It's not just about studying, I think. Like for example, the female who is in school again. She's hoping perhaps to afford herself a better career, afford herself a better earning, and of course to have a more comfortable experience. Yeah. So I hope I wasn't being too wordy, but trying to get the point across that everybody has a story and everybody has different ways of achieving their value. Yeah.
For me, like I've kind of previously kind of relied and leaned on the next big thing to kind of get me through now. And I say this
Right.
in reflection of what you're saying about they using money to get to the next stage or to get out of the situation that they're in right now, right?
Mhm.
But personally, I found that finding acceptance in what is happening right now and finding that
Mm,
sense of stillness within what's going on right now is that sort of universal framework that we could carry forward through any situation, because I didn't want to find myself in a mindset where I keep thinking that the grass is always greener on the other side, right? I don't want to keep sticking and thinking like, I need something else to make me either happier or more successful, or this next thing will get me more money, etc. Do you think that social media has an impact on that type of thinking, and like how powerful is that?
well, you see, I kind of back and forth with the whole social media topic, because if it's not social media, it's the newspaper, it's TV, there's always it's the smoke signals that the caveman sent. Humans try to communicate and share with each other since the dawn of time, right? So I'm not going at an all out war on social media. But yes, it's seeing. Oh, you think you're seeing into other people's lives more conveniently now could cause a lot of comparison, and I think we all guilty of feeling a bit like, geez, my life is real lame right now, when you go on social media and you're seeing all these influencers and right? All these influencers and even just your friends or colleagues seemingly have it all together. I'm very appreciative of articles that come out stating the different percentages of happiness, anxiety, etc., that has been going up and down accordingly when dealing with social media. My personal view is to follow what makes you feel good, and follow what makes you feel like you're growing a little bit. It doesn't have to be some, what do you call it, cookie cutter influence only kind of thing. You could follow some meme pages that take the edge off. You can balance it with some stocks and business help pages. You can balance your social media with friends and family who make you feel good. Um, even. different DIY types pages to keep the creative juices flowing. So how I structure my social media is because I know from the different documentaries and stuff that everything is a science to those that create the platforms, the color red that they use for notifications, the songs. They spend billions on you to use a free platform. So it can't be just for chance. Yeah. Um, but I still empower myself and not try to go down the rabbit hole of conspiracy because you'll get lost. I just keep myself calm by saying, okay, I manage which one I use. So I'm only on Instagram. Facebook is strictly for business, so you don't see me there at all. So Instagram, I do scroll a lot. Yes, I do notice when you think about something, it shows up as an ad. But I try not to think too deeply about it because even if you did some research on the ads in the well, not 20s, but when we still had black and white motion pictures and stuff, it's some of those same psychological principles being used right now. It's not new. The whole brain's reward system thing. So, to just blame it on social media would kind of, it's been going on for so long. It's not just social media. Social media is a machine. It's probably their best machine thus far. Um, but yeah, you really just have to manage within um, the different media. You have to manage it for yourself. Choose better pages if you can, right? And just use your feelings as a gauge. What are your thoughts?
Incidentally, I was watching this video last night where the guy was kind of breaking down the self-help industry, right? And he was
Hmm.
talking about the dopamine release that comes from watching these small bits of content that make you feel good about yourself. And then he was
Yeah,
explaining about the fact that this is a multi-billion-dollar industry that needs to push you just enough to need more every single
yeah.
time. And the
Hmm.
conclusion at the end of the video was that, look, this is a balance between being inspired, getting that dopamine release, and then acting on it. Because so many people get stuck in this loop of constantly looking for the next thing that will get them more dopamine or get them more inspired without acting on it. And then you see yourself at the end of that path in this position where I've looked at all these things, I've read all these books, I've looked at all these videos, and I'm still not the person that I wanted to be. And I think that that pressure, it crushes so many people and it leads to this high mortality rate through suicide, and there's so many increased cases of depression, etc. And you're right, it's not just social media. Since the caveman could send up these smoke signals, we've been comparing ourselves to others.
And my
And
smoke is thicker, just saying.
And based on that, I was thinking about, you as a woman in a business place, what challenges have you faced, or what issues might you have come across? Again, extended from the topic about like Kamala coming into office and whatnot. You are
Mhm.
qualified, you know what you're saying, you know what you're talking about, you understand what you're saying. Has there been any position that you've been in that somebody might have discredited what you've had to say simply because of your gender?
Okay, I'm gonna try to keep it professional here. Yes, but not maybe because of the way I carry myself and I don't want to speak for women in general because everybody has their experience. But for me, it has happened, but maybe I'm nipped it in the bud or brush it off. But my experience has been that, well, you're a woman, so yeah, you have to be protected and kind of like, yeah, we're hearing you, but we're not hearing you because, you're just so cute, a kind of way like, yeah, it's okay, don't worry. And they kind of brush off your statement sometimes and think, well, they're the men, they are the leaders, providers automatically. And, you could say a little contribution, thanks for that, but we will get to decide for you. So that has been my experience. But other than that, my gender hasn't really hindered me in business except for probably unwanted romantic advances in the workplace and the business sector.
Okay.
But that's it. Actually
And
face more challenges for being black or being dark skinned than I have for being a woman, in my opinion.
you want to expand on that a little bit?
Well, sure. In certain environments, I have experience where, for being black, some people do have their own biases and they think dark skin, especially black persons, should only be workers and not owners, and that my name doesn't match my face. So I get that a lot. It's like, oh, this is Hadassah. You sound like you're foreign, especially my email address does not help .uk. So when I show up, or maybe the way I speak over the phone, they're always kind of like not sure that the face or the person goes with the name and the titles and the accolades perhaps. So yeah, you do get that kind of covert um, discomfort or judgment. And it's in Trinidad and Tobago, a very multiracial and very Callaloo mixing pot. So it's kind of unfortunate, but yeah.
I think based on the way that you speak, and again, the accolades and the achievements and the things that you've done, and just the general way that you care about yourself, it breaks the prejudice. And I think that
Mm,
there's a surprise that is attached to that, a surprise reaction that is attached to that you touched on just now. Like if I hear you over the phone and then I see you in person, maybe it doesn't add up. But
right,
that to me seems to be a more it's more of a societal ingraining in that we've been
right,
built like this from so long to expect this from this or that from that, and then
yeah,
to find yourself in a position where you are from both sides,
mm,
you sound a certain way, but you look a certain way. And then some people might see that as a bad thing. Some people might see that as a good thing. And then I wonder about what is the pull and tug that you have to deal with based on those expectations of others.
well, I try to be self-managed in that, you know, yeah, as you go through your own personal growth, to not think too much of what others' opinions are and all that good stuff that they tell you and all those self-help books, okay. But as a day-to-day person, sometimes it's annoying and it's discouraging. Like, seriously, we're doing this. So you just have to keep reaffirming, take your rest when you need it, share your experience with friends, etc., support, and keep it moving because you just kind of have hope that same with the social media that we share more, whether we're sharing our bad experiences and good ones, and that people will grow and evolve, yeah, and also to remember your humanity as well, yeah.
Let's talk about creativity, right?
Mm-hmm.
You like to make things. You like to cook. You like to create things either with your hands or with your mind or put stories together with words, etc. What was the
Mm-hmm.
background for that? Is it that something that you just like always used to be interested in, or is this something that again has developed over time?
Oh, I love this question. Well, my mother was very creative too. I grew up with her. Those old singer machines, the ones that look like a, a bicycle, whatever you want to call that. So she would be sewing, and I would be on the pedal going up and down. So I don't know. I don't know if it's hereditary, nurture, nature, whatever. But as long as I can remember, I've been surrounded by creativity, and I like it. It's therapeutic. It's me. It's fun. It's a good outlet and a channel too. Mhm.
So then we get to the fact that okay, they're the businesses that have been sprung out of this creativity. Is it
Mhm.
that you feel like you need to have a business from creativity, or this is just like an experiment that you want to go through?
Right. This is a good conversation, and I'll tell you why. Because when I was 16, I was just making stuff because, well, I was bored and I'm good with my hands and I'm having fun. And then everybody, like older people, people your age, everybody's on you like, you're wasting your talent. You should be selling this. You have to bow to capitalism. You must earn. You must. If you're not, you're a fool. And I was like, yep, I just want to have some fun though. I just like it. So I run and get my business registered. I run and get into these selling markets. I run and I'm just tired. And then the more the business develops around the creative, the less creative and the more admin you become. And then where's the fun and where's the creativity? And then when you pull out, because all these expectations of people like, and you were such a talented girl or such a talented boy, and where's all of this showing up now? He's just not doing anything, or she's just not doing anything. Yeah, it's almost as though people project their idea of lack onto you.
Mm.
Like they see you doing small things that you just find, yeah, it's just me being me. And they make it so big because in their minds, they could never. And they don't have those abilities. And if they did, they would conquer Earth. And it's like, chill, just expressing just like you can if you would remove the mental blockages. I understandably think everyone's creative. Just, some people tap into it more. Um, whether it be again through nature or nurture. So no, you do not have to monopolize or capitalize on all your creative aspects. You can save some for your intimacy. You could save some for your self-help, growth, and just relaxing. Like gardening. I just like to do it. It just makes my head clear. You're not gonna see me driving around. Yeah, man, you're on the outside, or whatever. But then it's good. And if you're talking to younger people, it's
Mm.
good to write down a list, two columns really, what I'm good at, and then what I'm willing to make money off of. And sometimes you'd find you don't want to draw a line connecting what you're good at to what you're willing to make money for. For example, like I said, the gardening. I don't want to be a gardener for hire. I don't, but I absolutely love flowers and planting them outside. Yeah, so it helps the younger persons or even people our age or older just clarify their boundaries
Mm.
and what they're willing to do for money or not. Um, so yeah.
Listening to that, right? There's this again, a sense of projection that older people kind of project onto us what they expect, that kind of vicarious expectation. And look, you're gonna live the life that I wanted to live on my behalf because I didn't get to live it. And then they might they have the various excuses, right? There's one like, I was pregnant with you, so I didn't get to
Yeah.
do this, that, or the other, etc. And the list continues as to what people might blame it on, right?
Mhm.
If it is that you get to that position in later years, do you think you'll be conscious of it, like recognize, look, this is not what I want to be? Or do you think that that's something that incrementally approaches over time?
Wow, that's so good. Here's what happened. And I mean, if you ask somebody else the same question, Dominic, they'll give you a different response. But Hadassah R. Gordon, since I was little, I don't know how to say this amicably, but I became very disheartened with adults in general. That's a nice way of saying I hated them. Because I saw too much discrepancies. Like you'd get licks for doing what they do, you'd get buff for doing what is okay for somebody else to do. It's just like what's really going on here. So, to me as a child, I just begged myself to never forget what it was to be a child. And sometimes I do forget right now. So, like your question asking me, do you think you'll ever forget? Maybe, but I so hope that the little me inside of me comes back and gives me a little hit on my head, like, don't forget what you said, that you won't forget. Yeah, try not to forget the little child in you that needed understanding and a little peace. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why adults like to act like I knew better, and in my day, no, 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 Leroy. In your day, really, please, Patricia. We've all been there, and to have a little more understanding, please give the children and them some leeway. And yeah, yeah, I pray, I really hope I don't forget what it felt like.
I mean, because the rules change, right? The systems change. And especially going back to the initial topic of like education and learning, the way that society was taught back in 18 something is so different, yet still the same. And what I
Yeah,
mean by that is it's the same methods that they're using from back then to teach us now. While we have issues now that were non-existent back then, 2020 is a prime example of that. So
right.
do you think that society is as, and again, go back to the idea of fluidity, do you think that society now as a whole is as fluid as it should be to adapt to the needs and the wants of its members, us.
Right. Now, you're going to bring up the whole boomers versus millennials versus Gen X debate. We know how we feel about those boomers, but we love them. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, definitely. Social media. You see, just as an example, right? For me, when I'm on social media, maybe how I've channeled, well, chosen to follow certain pages, etc. I'm seeing the awakening, though. I'm seeing people our age, like millennials, saving the future. Honestly, like I don't know, maybe they're just sick and tired of being sick and tired, and they don't want the injustice. They don't want the well, just do it because I tell you. They don't want the statements without proof. They don't want it. And you know, to those who are older, where they jokingly call boomers, etc. That's how they grew up. And so it seems like you're being rude or insolent or risky. But I see it as transformative. Yeah, my mouth, yeah, that word.
Spelling error.
Transformative. Yeah, a
Autocorrect coming on.
gorgeous spelling. So I, I see it as it's changing us for the better. I'm really hoping. I mean, you gotta ruffle some feathers.
There's so many discussions about what the future holds, right? We have ideas about what the future has in it and what it could be. And Yuval Harari is one author who has this entire book called Homo Deus. He's like focusing on what the human race will evolve into.
Right?
When we look at movies, let's say Back to the Future, right, that forecasted
Mm-hmm.
what would have happened now, and we realize the distance we still have to go between what people thought would have been the future and what the future actually is, i.e., our present. Do you think that that trajectory of not hitting the mark will continue, or within 10, 20 years that we would have actually advanced in a way that we think we would advance?
Okay, question. What exactly, in what aspect of society are you referring to? Technology? Because
I think technology is the easiest example to quote and to
mm,
use to illuminate the question. So yeah, technology could be one aspect of it.
honestly, I do believe in the butterfly effect. So let's just say they wanted to project right now. We're going through COVID, right? So let's project for the next 10 years that somebody finds a super elixir. I don't even want to say the V word. A super elixir that prevents you from getting whatever. You see, will that have been relevant in January 2020? No, it wouldn't. We wouldn't have the need for that desire. So I don't even really, I wouldn't say waste my time, but I don't focus too much on projections because like the butterfly effect, I could sneeze and that could create such a difference in my trajectory of life. I don't see the point really, you know. Flying cars was probably something necessary back then, but do you see flying cars as a priority right now?
No.
Unless you live in Freeport, because seriously, I cannot deal with the traffic. But yeah, so that's it for me. I was going to say something else, but I forgot. Mm, yeah, it'll come back.
Yeah,
What do you
eventually.
think?
I think that I think that we have expectations of the future
Mm-hmm.
that ignore the past. So we find ourselves in this kind of position where we are likely to repeat the past because we don't understand it. And the whole point of history is not to prevent certain mistakes from being repeated, but more to free ourselves from those mistakes. So that if
Right.
it is we find ourselves at this Y junction where we have to go either left or right in the future, we know what happened before and we know what may happen in the future based on that. But we still have to live in this state of flux and that we're never really sure. Even when we
Mm-hmm.
think of data and we think of all the information that we use to assess, the stock market or medical or whatever, data is always a past experience. There's always something that has happened before. We have no data about the future. It is physically impossible for us to know what's going to happen in the next 5 minutes, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if it is that we find ourselves in this position where we expect something to happen in the future, like do we end up restricting ourselves with that expectation? Or is it that the expectation can be so fluid, again, fluidity, that it allows us to grow without feeling stifled by that same expectation?
Wow. Well, Mr. Hawking, I would just have to say, in your study of the black hole, Wow, that was very profound. Wow. Uh, yes, yes, sometimes our hopes can even be our limitation. I agree with you. So
But
there's really no one way about it.
sometimes even like there's like almost like a placebo effect. Like you might go by
Mm,
this fortune teller or whatever, and she tells you, look, you're gonna you know step in a puddle outside during the course of the day, and because she's told you that, now you're aware of it and you end up stepping in the puddle, and then you blame it on the fortune teller, and it's like, oh, so she was able to predict the future. We
mm,
have so many instances of this sort of false news and this sort of false broadcasting of what might happen, and then obviously I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but then there's the idea of religion and the idea of prophets and the idea of how spirituality affects, where we go in the future. But how accurate was it? We tend to
yeah,
find in the Bible so many references and so many ideas of certain things that have come to pass and have taken place. But now, in an age where we know so much more than then, and we have so much access to so much more information, we tend to actually find the opposite happening, in that we have less of an idea of what's going to happen tomorrow. And I just
mhm.
wonder, like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, do you see technology actually hampering, or like this access to information almost pushing us back? Because it seems that's what's happening and nobody could really explain it.
Wow. I love that you mentioned that because, all right, so let's just say I meditate and such, right? And I like to dabble in these kind of things. Basically, what you're saying is like the busyness of life.
Yeah.
It almost seems as though we're busying to go where?
Yeah.
Where are we so busy to go? Yeah. And I don't know. It wasn't my thought, but I kind of have this belief now through meditation that not necessarily just about the flow, because if somebody's in ICU, you're going to tell them, "Don't worry, just go with the flow. I'm not giving you anesthesia." Come on, seriously, let's be real. But if you're in a good place and like us just having a conversation and we're going a little metaphysical here, I think the highest order is in the flow, because it seems almost like if we beating up ourselves and ending up in the same place all the time. And it's the cyclical nature that you're kind of seeing regardless of technology. It seems like we're still repeating the past no matter what. You make right choices, you still repeating the past. You make bad choices and it's still repeating the past. Some people even quarrel that, well, what if it's just the nature of man, to keep repeating? It's in our DNA, it carries all the, but I don't know. That is a question for God or whatever higher power, because I would be lying like, I don't know. And you're so right, because it blew my mind when I was kind of dabbling in like quantum physics and stuff, that the more they look, the less anything seems real, or the less knowledge they really have. Is like Epicurus, I think, or Confucius, who said, the more I know, all I know is that I know nothing. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and to anybody, just an average person that's like, nah, boy, I just want to tap out now because where are they trying to tell me? uh, but I don't know. You just have to come to peace with that. Maybe
I feel
something else I
like,
really wanted to say. Mm?
yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
No, you talk because it just keeps slipping me.
I feel like the metaphysical aspect of it, I feel like that was inevitable. Like we would have
Mm,
reached that one way or the other, right?
yeah,
And I think that this conversation about prediction and expectation has a lot to do also with scale and our ability to comprehend scale. Because
mm,
if we look at the sun, right, the sun seems so huge to us and seems so far away and so large to us, but the sun is actually minuscule compared to the actual bigger bodies in the solar system. But we
right,
we almost physically, biologically, chemically cannot comprehend the size of certain things. Like, it is beyond our spectrum and our gamut of understanding how large certain things are. And I just wonder if that same inability to comprehend scale transcends its way into our expectations. Is it that some things are just meant to, we just go with the flow? Like, we can't predict it, we just have to go with it. What level of control do we really have over anything? So if we use religion as a way to, as a form of control, you know, we have certain questions that cannot be answered, certain ideas of scale that cannot be answered, but we could say is a mystery of the Bible, for example. We have
Right.
certain things that we can't understand, like the almost whatever concept of time you have, whether it's cyclical or linear or whatever it is, right? But we cannot understand what it meant before time. Like, even if time is a human measure, we cannot understand what happens before or after time. Like, we don't have that ability, right? So is it that we then find
After
ourselves,
time. Hmm.
pardon? Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
so then if it is we were able to transcend that and go a step above, is it that we find ourselves in some sort of question where, you know, the future becomes definite because we could touch it, like in Interstellar, for example, you know, time became tangible. So if time was
Yeah.
tangible to us, would we then have an expectation that is tangible? So we know that, look, i could I could pick up this remote, right? I know I could do that, and I know that in the future I see it there, so I could pick it up. So I know that in the next 5 seconds I could predict and control that within the next 5 seconds I'm going to pick up this remote, right? But then there's the unseen. There's the sense
Mhm.
of scale, and there's the things that we cannot fathom how large or how big it is. So all that is just like a roundabout way of saying, you know, we have to at some point be comfortable with not knowing.
Yes,
That's just
that's
the
it.
explanation of that same statement. You know, the more we know is the more we realize we don't know. And is that a
Mhm.
human condition that we then just have to accept and move with and make the best of? Or is it that we spend our lives in this turmoil of trying to understand more and more and more? And then you lose the opportunity to go outside and water your plants, you know, because you keep
Ah,
studying. I have to figure out the next cure to COVID. Like, what is the
right.
balance, you know?
Okay. Hmm. Well, when you talked about possibility, right? I mean, how could there be one possibility? That would mean that we have determinism and our lives are pre-written, and I mean, that would make life such a bore. I don't
True.
believe in one possibility at all. Um, I think every choice spins like a new branch in reality, perhaps. If we had the power or the vision, we could probably see multiple cells doing different choices, but somehow we kind of aligned like a train track. Boom, we changing all the time
Mm-hmm.
um, via choices. Just the choice to be on the Zoom call instead of driving out the road. Who knows what could have been so different in my entire life because of this?
True.
We just don't know. And the thing that I had forgotten that I now remember is the fact that in quantum physics, they got, I think, further down past molecular and, all, and atoms to the particle and waves. And the particles and the waves move differently when observed, almost like they were conscious of being observed. I mean, that blew my mind, and that was it. That was the last day I tried to control life or like try to predict the future. I was done because what is the sense? What is science if what is being observed seems to be more smart than science itself? Then what are you trying to tell me? That there's consciousness in a particle? Then what is a particle? What? How do we not know that a particle is another universe? How do we not know that a particle is God itself looking back at you, just playing? You playing scientist, you observing me, and then I could change my behavior. So when they looked away from the experiment, I think it was, I could be mixing it up, but like the particle was moving in waves again. And then when they looked at it, it was moving in particles, something like that. So they knew that it was aware. It's aware. So how can I even be here talking about it? Just, I don't know, it just, according to you in scale, it just doesn't seem. So many things we're fussing about is our own anxieties. We're projecting again. I need to know how my life's gonna end. I need to know how this business venture is gonna work out because we're uncomfortable. We're feeling discomfort, yeah, and we want a short answer to feel at peace again, yeah. But and that's why we have religion and laws and well, laws to keep order and all that, so they say. But it's to give us answers to these impossible questions.
One of the ways that they use, just explain quantum physics then to anybody that might be
Mm,
listening to this tomorrow, 5 years from now, or whatever.
yes,
Currently, our understanding of quantum physics is that the smallest form of a particle goes down beyond string theory, right? So the idea is that the smallest form of computing that we know right now is an electrical signal, is either on or off, and that's
Right.
represented by either 1 or 0. Now we have a dual way of thinking, right? On this scale of existence, we have a dual way of thinking. Something has to be either here or there. It has to be either on or off. It has to be either inside or outside. But
That's
when you
dualism.
correct, so something is
Mm.
either good or bad. Something is either
Yeah.
alive or dead. We had that is our general understanding of physics as it is right now. But when you
But
go
I
down
mean, not
to
just so.
correct, so when you go down
Yeah.
on a quantum level now, things don't work like that.
No.
Cells can be either on or off, or inside or outside, or alive or dead at the same time. And that
Yeah.
ability is what expands quantum computing so exponentially because it's not restricted to the space that it's given. It can be
Right.
either or at the same time. So if it is that we
Mm.
consider again the fan remote, if we give it this amount of space, it could be either this or this at the same time. It could be either here or here at the same time. And what that does for computing is that it expands. If you think of Moore's law, right? Moore's law is the thing that says, look, it will double the capacity every 1 year or whatever it is. Right? I can't remember that exact thing right now. But if we try to fit, if you consider a floppy disk and we consider how small that is to us now, there was a process that got us to the point that a floppy disk now seems small, right? But when a floppy disk was
Yeah.
a thing, it was big. It was plenty storage. So that's basically what quantum computing is trying to expand on. It's trying to look at how we could push storage further, how we could push processing power further by the fact that something can be either on or off at the same time. Now, the way that the equations are affected by it is it gives us a lot more possibilities at a time. Now, if you run
Mhm.
a equation through a quantum computing system, it doesn't give you back the exact same answer every single time. It'll be off by 0.000000001 every single time. But the fact is, it could run millions more computations per second because each one of those electrical signals can be either on or off at the same time. So if it could be either one of those states, then it immediately doubles our power. And then if you think of computational power, like is not 1 plus 1 or 2 plus 2, is 2 by 2 is 4, and then 4 by 4 is 16, and then 16 by 16, and so on and so on, and that's how it grows, right? So that's just again, it blew my mind the first time I saw it too. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
so
Oh my God.
what we understand of physics now is like only the tip of the iceberg. And I think I had this conversation with you previously too. I'm like, okay, so right now we know something that's so small, but what if we were to go even smaller than that and then realize like it was the whole thing just unfolded like all the way
Yeah.
back around so we could see like
Yeah.
the
Come right back
same
up.
correct, the same
Like a black
giant
hole.
sun, correct,
Yep.
inside of
Hmm.
this particle, right? It's like, is
Yep.
that possible? Maybe.
Anything is possible. Anything is
So
possible. There has to come some, like you said, you have to be comfortable with not knowing, and that's what they call the great surrender. You
mhm.
know, you might go even higher and say that in the surrender you find because you already are, you know. So it's not about I have to find, I have to go, I have to be. You already are. Just like you say, you go all these way, all these scientific studies, smaller particle, huge colliders or whatever, smashing it up, and then you just look right back at yourself. I mean, what you gonna do? Or you might stare God right in his face, you know? That's
Mhm.
another topic.
Another topic. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it's like zooming into a map and you're just zooming all the way into like the tiny pixel on the screen, and then you just go all the way back around and see the huge map
Yeah,
again, and just
again. And
you
maybe
know
that's why we end right back up where we begin.
possibly,
Like a torus, a toroidal flow goes up
hmm
and down and around and then again.
and
Yeah,
maybe that's why history repeats itself.
maybe. Ooh,
Ooh.
ooh, spooky. And that's it for the Twilight Zone. Yeah,
Yeah.
good, good. Mhm.
So I think we may have overloaded the brains of whoever might be paying attention to this. So I just want to stop at this point and just be like, you know, we've been friends for a long time, and the
Yeah.
conversation somehow always end up like this, somehow or the other. Like 2 o'clock in the morning, and it might be like, what if?
Yeah,
and
what
like
is,
I have to say thank you for that. I have to say thank you for being that what if person to shed light or shed different perspectives. And I think that that same ability to shed different perspectives on anything
yeah,
is definitely like one of the things that has gotten you where you are and will continue to fuel where you have to go. And I have no doubt in my mind whatsoever that the world is yours and you will keep going and keep pushing, and whatever
yeah.
comes next,
That
you
is
can
so
message me at
sweet.
2 o'clock
Thank
in the
you.
morning and we'll have those what if conversations.
Well, is it really 2 o'clock now? Come on, time is relative.
Ah.
I just want to say detail because definitely you've always been one to ask questions, like, even when it's difficult because of cognitive dissonance, which is the discomfort we feel when our worldview is threatened. You know how that goes every the election. So yes, thank you for asking questions and always being ready to, as you said, be on the next big thing. And you really have an appetite for figuring things out. So it is an honor indeed. It is an honor indeed.
Nice one.
And thanks for having me. This was wonderful.
All right,
Hmm.
thank you.